NHR Weekly, where we discuss current trends in education with representatives of local colleges and universities. I am your host, Melanie Copenhaver. Today we have with us Roger Smith, Hampton Roads Area Coordinator of Troy Universities. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Today we are going to be discussing how education has changed over the last 2 decades and academic fraud. Both, I think, are very important topics. May not have a whole lot to do with each other, but I think there's a lot to be said and a lot of knowledge to be added to those of us out there that may not know a whole lot about either of them. First of all, how has education improved over time?
Probably the greatest area of improvement is access to higher education. You can imagine, say 20 years ago, was your scope of focus. Education was really limited to people who may have lived in a local geographic area, or then the stereotypical that you see like in the movies, the young man getting on the train and going away to college kind of thing. And nowadays, you literally can live anywhere in the world and have access to higher education. As an example, in Troy University, we teach students in Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, Turkey, and we have students, online students that may be in Germany, Oklahoma, Troy, Alabama, and they're all in the same class. So you have access to the education and you have perspectives from people around the globe. So it's really changed a lot in 20 years.
Now, the students overseas, are they more military students or just general population?
They're primarily going to be military students. The foreign nationals, there are admissions differences that they would have to work through for online. Most of the international students that Troy has, they come to our campus in Alabama. Actually, it kind of works out that they would complete a program, say Vietnam students. They complete their first year in Vietnam, come to Troy for 2 years, and finish their final year in Vietnam and get a degree from Troy University. But you may also find American citizens that are stationed overseas. Like in the State Department would be a good example. So whatever took an American citizen overseas, you can find them with Troy.
How has student enrollment and demographics changed? What is there are traditional students and...
It's a great question.
Okay.
Actually, the term traditional student needs to be redefined.
Okay.
Again, 20 years ago, I'll have to even take you back further than that, say in the 60s.
Right.
I was born in the 60s. Again, your traditional student, I guess that's probably how that term got tagged, is the 18 to 24-year-old student. And that group was the majority of people who went to university.
Right.
Now, in 2013, 85% of students who are pursuing a higher education are older than 25 years old. So the term traditional student needs to be redefined.
Do you think we should redefine the traditional student and replace adult student with traditional student?
Probably so. Even the term of a traditional student, if you could look forward 25 years down the road, which I can't predict the future, but if you look at ongoing trends, even students in Troy University attending traditional classes at our traditional campus in Alabama, we find that many of those students are living in the dorm or are taking online classes. So the definition of a traditional student, I don't know what a traditional campus is going to look like in 25 years because they're going to be taking classes online.
Yeah, very good point. Do you think that based on history and based on future, I know that's kind of a tough one to go, do you think there's going to be less classroom education and more online? Do you still think, I know that there's the need for tactile and hands-on learning, but...
Right. There's something to be gained by a young adult who goes away to a campus, an on-the-ground campus, and finding themselves. So that is important. Will that completely go away? I don't know. But I can tell you that online education is growing tremendously. As an example, actually 2 years in a row, and the numbers have increased. I've heard reports from the Air Force saying that the amount of their tuition assistance, 80% of their students receiving tuition assistance is for online education. So that's tremendous. I mean, and if you look back where it was 20 years ago, online really didn't exist.
Right.
So it was all on in class.
Right.
So it's just transitioning in a great speed.
One of the things that we had touched on and didn't really expand on was the changes in student enrollment and demographics. I know that I brought that up and I think we quickly got sidetracked.
Right.
The demographics aspect, do you think that the gender enrollment has evened out? I know that has been times in the past where there's more men going to college versus women.
Right.
Do you think it's a little bit more equal now?
My numbers, from what I understand at Troy University, it's pretty darn even. Actually, I think you'll probably find slightly more females than males enrolled at Troy University. From what I read in like the Chronicle of Higher Education, specific fields. I just saw something the other day that gains in the world of computers and computer science, the gains that women made in the 80s and 90s, they're starting to slip. So I don't know the reason for the trend, but there's not as many women in that particular field as people would want.
Let's talk about the patterns of attendance in the past versus current. Do you feel that does it take longer? Are people taking longer to get their degrees? Is there less commitment, more commitment?
What we're finding is the challenge. It goes back to that traditional, non-traditional student again. For the 18 to 24 year group, it's not uncommon. Actually, it's probably very common for a student to take 5 years to complete a 4-year bachelor's degree, just as an example. It may even be common to take 6 years to complete that 4-year degree. What we're finding with that older group, again, it's what I was. I was active duty in the Coast Guard, and when you're trying to balance work requirements, mission, you're trying to stay and watch, your family, studying, writing papers, it takes a significant. I was literally a one class at a time guy,
right.
And so it took forever to complete that under. But I kept doing it, and eventually you can get there.
Right.
So I think we are finding it takes longer to complete that bachelor's degree or even a master's degree. But you're balancing a lot more work.
By adding the convenience of online learning, does that decrease? Do you think it decreases actual learning because you are?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Well, yeah, what the experts say is you actually originally that is what people thought about online learning, but over time, let's say Troy's been doing online learning about 7 years, I believe it is, and we've been doing distance learning since the 1950s, but online specifically about 7 years. And what not with just Troy, but for let's say the Chronicle of Higher Education, what the experts are seeing is because online learning, you're required to engage. And I say that as opposed to we've all seen the student who comes to class, sits in the back of the room and whether they listen to the teacher or not, but they're sitting back in the room, they don't raise their hand, they don't engage in the class,
right.
and they walk and they get their class participation. Well, online requires you, one, you have to read the textbook, you're going to have to read the presentations, and more importantly, your in-class participation is basically evaluated through the engagement in discussion boards.
Okay.
So, as an example, a professor may post 1 or 2 discussion topics per week, and the student is required to engage in each of those gets up to the professor 2 or 3 times through the week, and they want to see it dispersed. And oftentimes they have the ability to block other people's posts until you post one time. So they're requiring you to engage in the class and have thoughtful, meaningful input. So I think it's more.
Okay. What about academic integrity and fraud? Let's talk about that. I don't understand, or I don't really know how prevalent it is. Does it really exist as much now as it used to? I know that there's always been cheating and honesty and dishonesty, but
academic integrity and fraud are two sides of the same coin, I think. I'll throw out fraud first. Within higher education, and I think online specifically, the Department of Education put out a letter a couple of years ago. Was talking about financial fraud, and they're talking. I don't want to get too many details, but I want to give you ideas out there. But there are financial fraud issues out there where people are gaming the system and attending classes and then doing activities to get the money from the federal government, and then maybe not attaining the degree that the Department of Education is providing the money for. So that exists, and academic integrity is another point. I don't know that it's any worse than it used to be. I think, like you said, everybody knows that there are some people who cheat a little bit, and there are some people who cheat a lot. Actually, it's kind of funny. My wife was looking on Craigslist, I guess it was last year or so, and she saw an ad for an individual, and I believe it was a business course that they were advertising for someone to take the class for. Well, I don't, and I think in the context of the ad, it said, "Well, if you do well in this class, I'll be willing to pay you for the whole degree."
Wow.
Okay, we can't do that with Troy.
Right.
With Troy, we have a couple. At a minimum, we require at least one exam per class to be a proctored exam. The proctored exam can be completed in a number of ways. One, you can come into our office, and we have a testing service where we proctor the exam there. Or you can use a third-party proctoring service called ProctorU, and with that one, you pay them a proctoring fee, and if you have a webcam on your computer, you identify yourself, and they watch you while you take your exam. Or another one is you could go to a national testing association group, and then you pay their administration fee, and when you sit wherever it might be, and you can proctor the exam that way as well. And we do that because we want the student to value the degree, and we're trying to protect our integrity as well. Troy University, we use Turnitin, which is document scanning software, if you will. So as a student who is required to write a research paper and turn it in, being the internet being so prevalent, you could find just tons of information out there.
Right.
And it's okay to use the information that's available, but you have to properly cite your sources.
Absolutely.
And those types of things. Well, turn it in. Well, even your own paper. If I wrote a paper last semester or last term for the online with Troy, if I write I have to cite my own paper. I can't just copy a paper and then reuse it in the next class. Well, how Turnitin is billions of web crawls and millions of student papers, and the student scans it in, and it gives a report, immediate feedback to the student and the professor on what percentage of that is actually original content.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating,
Right.
and a little scary,
Yeah.
but very fascinating. Very fascinating. This one has definitely been on the top of my head. Do you think, in general, the internet is making our brain lazy?
Well, interesting question. No, brain lazy. I don't think so, because more information is available. I mean, it's information overload.
Yes.
To tell you the truth, there's so much information. Now, how do you absorb it all? And I can't even imagine all of the different sources out there. I'm kind of old school, and I used to watch the 6 o'clock evening news. I don't even do that. Now I do get most of my news from the internet, but it's more the traditional, the Fox News or the CNN website.
Right.
And then I've got young adult sons, and they obtain their information more from mediums like Reddit and stuff like that. And we're kind of talking about the same things at the dinner table, different news sources,
right?
But it is different perspectives.
Absolutely different
news
perspectives.
sources. So I don't think at all the internet is making the information more difficult to get.
Do you think that the internet is changing how educators conduct their classes?
Absolutely. Making the classroom available to anybody is really important, or makes it easier. But just the way the classroom is taught, just incorporating appropriate YouTube videos into a lecture. In Troy, we use it's called lecture capture. So the professor can actually give that lecture, post it online, and then, like I said, that convenience factor that when a student gets home from their commute, they can watch it whatever time's convenient for them. I mean, it could easily be no police officer who's on shift work.
Right.
So they could watch that lecture. They don't have to worry about being in class on time. It's just posted there waiting for them. At the graduate level, students should expect to be working on team projects. Almost every class that I did at the graduate level, you have team projects. Well, old school is you try to find someplace convenient to meet. Now with Collaborate, students can, actually your class might be in California and you're in Virginia.
Right.
So you basically, it's kind of like Skype, more or less, where you can just find a time to get into the classroom and talk to each other and work on the projects at the same time. So it's made the world much smaller in that aspect.
I think the fascinating part to me about the students being able to be in a class with people from all over the country, or all over the world for that matter, is that depending on the topic or the subject or whatever the class is about, you get many different perspectives.
Absolutely.
It's not just based on the knowledge or the information that's going on in your area, in your immediate community. You've got the influences of another state, another governing body, another climate even. It's so many different factors, so it can add a whole different perspective, especially like you were saying, working on a group project.
Right. But Troy we market ourselves as Alabama's international university. We have a significant number of students that come to the main campus, but like you mentioned, I mean, if you have people with a perspective, say from Alabama, and you're trying to blend that with cultures from China or Europe, all of those, instead of the governments and the way the education is provided and the expectations of the results, in those perspectives, I think it just makes a rich environment for a student.
Well, Roger, I would like to thank you for being here today. I think we've had some great conversations.
My pleasure.
And I would like to thank you all for watching NHR Weekly. Please join us for upcoming shows where we will be discussing education costs, public versus private schools, and methods of recruiting.